They say you never really know who you're sleeping with. Marcus Thorne certainly didn't. He walked into the most important business meeting of his life, holding his mistress's hand, convinced he was about to become the CEO of Orion Holdings. He thought his wife, Clara, was at home, crying over his cold indifference. He thought she was weak. He thought she was clueless. But when the boardroom doors swung open and the chair turned around, Marcus realized two things instantly. First, his life was over. And second, the ruthless billionaire owner he had been trying to impress for months was the woman he had forgotten to kiss goodbye that morning. The rain in Seattle was relentless, hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse like a warning Marcus Thorne refused to hear. "Clara, where is my grey tie? The silk one!" Marcus bellowed, his voice echoing off the marble walls of the master bedroom. He was standing in front of the mirror, adjusting a cufflink on his bespoke Brioni suit, worth more than most people's cars. Clara Thorne, a woman of 34 who looked 40 due to the exhaustion in her eyes, rushed out of the walk-in closet. She held the grey tie gingerly. She was wearing a faded oversized cardigan and leggings, her hair tied back in a messy bun. To the outside world, she was the invisible shadow behind the brilliant Marcus Thorne, the rising star of the tech investment world. "Here it is, Marcus," she said softly, reaching out to hand it to him. Marcus snatched it from her hand without making eye contact. "Took you long enough. You know today is the merger meeting with the board of Vanguard Logic. If I secure this deal, I become the youngest partner in the firm's history. Everything has to be perfect." "I know," Clara said, stepping back, her hands clasping together nervously. "I made you a protein shake. It's on the counter." "I don't have time for your sludge, Clara," he sneered, finally turning to look at her. His gaze was critical, sweeping over her plain attire. "Look at you. You're the wife of a future billionaire, yet you dress like you're ready to clean toilets. If the partners saw you, they'd think I married the help." Clara flinched but didn't look away. "I'm comfortable, Marcus, and I'm just staying home today. You said you'd be late tonight?" A smirk played on Marcus's lips. "Very late. The negotiations with the Vanguard representatives will likely go into the night. It's high stakes, Clara. Concepts you wouldn't understand. Just don't wait up. And don't call me. My phone will be off." "Okay," she whispered. He checked his Rolex, a gift Clara had bought him with her inheritance money 5 years ago, back when he was a nobody. He didn't remember that anymore. "I'm leaving. Do something productive today. Maybe read a book on fashion." He grabbed his briefcase and stormed out of the apartment without a goodbye. The heavy oak door slammed shut, leaving a ringing silence in the penthouse. Down in the underground garage, Marcus tossed his briefcase into the passenger seat of his Porsche Panamera. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number saved as accountant. "I'm on my way," he said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming smooth and seductive. "I'm waiting, baby," a sultry voice answered. "I'm wearing that dress you bought me. The one you said was too scandalous for a wife, but perfect for a future CEO's partner." Marcus laughed. Clara wouldn't know what to do with a dress like that. "Be ready, Jessica. We're going to the Ritz-Carlton first. I want you by my side when I walk into that lobby. Today, I take over the company. And soon, I'll be taking over a new life with you." Jessica laughed, a sharp, tinkling sound. "Is she suspicious?" "Clara," Marcus scoffed, revving the engine. "She's a mouse. She thinks I'm a god. She has no idea I'm filing the divorce papers the second this deal is signed. I'm taking everything, Jessica. The house, the accounts, everything. She signed that prenup 7 years ago without even reading it." "You're bad," Jessica purred. "I'm a winner, Marcus corrected. He peeled out of the garage, leaving the building behind. Upstairs, the mouse was no longer trembling. As soon as the door clicked shut, Clara's posture straightened. The nervous tremor in her hands vanished. She walked over to the window and watched the black Porsche merge into traffic. She picked up the protein shake Marcus had rejected and poured it slowly down the sink. Then she walked into the bedroom, stripped off the leggings and the cardigan, and opened a hidden panel at the back of the walk-in closet. Inside wasn't the wardrobe of a housewife. It was a row of sharp, tailored suits, Armani, Chanel, Tom Ford. She pulled out a sleek, navy blue power suit. She sat at her vanity, not to cry, but to apply makeup with the precision of a surgeon. Sharp eyeliner, bold red lipstick. She pulled the messy bun loose, letting her dark, glossy hair cascade in waves over her shoulders. She reached for her phone. It wasn't the cracked iPhone she used around Marcus. It was a secure satellite phone. She dialed a number. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice commanding and icy. "Mrs. Thorne," the voice on the other end answered instantly. "Or should I say, Madam Chairman?" "Chairman will do, Arthur," Clara replied. "Is the board assembled at the Vanguard headquarters?" "They are all seated, waiting for the acquisition meeting. Marcus Thorne is expected in 45 minutes. "Good," Clara said, fastening a diamond necklace around her neck, a piece worth $2 million, left to her by her grandmother, a detail Marcus never cared to ask about. "Make sure security is tight. I don't want any interruptions when I fire him." "Understood. And the mistress?" "Let her in," Clara said, checking her reflection. She didn't see a victim. She saw a predator. "If he wants to bring a circus to my boardroom, I'll make sure he enjoys the show." Jessica Vance adjusted the strap of her crimson dress as she slid into the passenger seat of Marcus's Porsche. She was 24, beautiful in a manufactured way, and hungry for status. She worked as a junior analyst at Marcus's firm, a job she barely performed because her real job was inflating Marcus's ego. "You look stunning," Marcus said, placing a hand on her knee as he drove toward the financial district. "And you look like the president of Vanguard Logic," she teased. "Are you nervous?" "About the meeting? No. The current CEO of Vanguard is a ghost. No one has ever seen him. They say he runs the company through proxies. It shows weakness. I'm going to walk in there, present the acquisition strategy, and offer to buy them out. If they refuse, I'll crush their stock value by noon. I have the leverage." "You're so powerful," Jessica cooed, visualizing the penthouses and yachts in her future. "And what about her?" Marcus sighed, feigning burden. "Clara is just dead weight, Jess. Honestly, it's charity that I've kept her around this long. She has no ambition. She spends her days knitting, or whatever it is housewives do. She's boring. You are fire. I need fire if I'm going to run an empire." "I just hate that you have to go home to her," Jessica pouted. "Not for long," Marcus promised. "I've already moved the assets. My lawyer, Jeffrey Bloom, found a loophole in the prenup. Since she hasn't contributed financially to the marriage in 5 years, I can cut her loose with almost nothing. Maybe a small condo in the suburbs so she doesn't starve. I'm not a monster." "You're too generous," Jessica laughed. They pulled up to the Vanguard Logic skyscraper, a glass monolith that pierced the grey Seattle sky. It was the headquarters of the most secretive and profitable tech conglomerate in the hemisphere. Valets rushed to open the doors. Marcus stepped out, buttoning his jacket, radiating arrogance. He extended a hand to Jessica, who stepped out like she was walking a red carpet. "Marcus Thorne," he announced to the head of security at the revolving doors. "Here for the 10 a.m. acquisition meeting with the board." The security guard, a large man with a stoic face, checked a tablet. He paused, his eyes flicking from Marcus to Jessica, and then, for a split second, a look of amusement crossed his face. "Right, Mr. Thorne. And the guest?" "This is my associate, Miss Vance. She is critical to the transition team." Marcus lied smoothly. "Very well. Top floor, the executive suite. They are waiting for you." Marcus took Jessica's arm. "Showtime." As they stepped into the elevator, Marcus checked his reflection in the mirrored walls. "After this, we celebrate. Champagne at Le Bernardin." Jessica kissed his cheek. "I can't wait to see you destroy them." Neither of them noticed that the elevator didn't stop at the 40th floor, the usual conference level. It continued rising all the way to the 60th floor, the penthouse boardroom, a level restricted to owners only. When the doors opened, the atmosphere was different. It wasn't the bustling noise of a corporate office. It was silent, heavy. The carpets were thick, the art on the walls was original Basquiat and Rothko. A woman in a sharp grey suit stood by a massive set of double oak doors. This was Sarah, the executive assistant. "Mr. Thorne," Sarah said, unsmiling. "You are late." "I am precisely on time," Marcus countered, checking his Rolex. "It is 10 a.m. on the dot. The CEO values early arrivals. It shows eagerness," Sarah droned. She looked at Jessica with open disdain. "Capacity in the boardroom is limited." "She stays," Marcus barked. "She's with me." Sarah hesitated, then pressed an earpiece. "He insists on the +1. "Understood." She stepped aside. "Go right in. The CEO is ready for you." Marcus smirked at Jessica. "See, you just have to be firm with these people." He pushed open the heavy oak doors, ready to see a trembling old man or a board of grey-haired puppets. What he saw was a long mahogany table. 12 serious-looking board members sat along the sides, their faces unreadable. But at the head of the table, the CEO's chair was turned away, facing the panoramic window that overlooked the city. The chair was high-backed, leather, imposing. Smoke from a thin cigarette curled up from the side of the chair. "Gentlemen," Marcus announced, his voice booming. "I am Marcus Thorne. I represent the acquisition team. I'm here to discuss the terms of your surrender." The room was silent. "You have a bold way of speaking, Mr. Thorne." A voice came from the chair. Marcus froze. The voice. It was low, modulated, authoritative, but it scratched at a memory in the back of his brain. It sounded familiar, yet impossible. "I speak the truth," Marcus said, recovering his composure. "Vanguard logic is stagnant. You need new blood. You need a leader who isn't afraid of the future. I have looked at your financials. Your ghost CEO strategy is failing. Investors want a face." "They want a face?" the voice asked, amused. "Yes. They want someone they can trust, someone with a track record, someone who doesn't hide." Marcus walked closer to the table, Jessica clicking along behind him on her heels. "Turn around, let's look each other in the eye and make a deal." "Be careful what you wish for, Marcus," the voice said. The chair slowly began to swivel. Marcus prepared his winning smile. He prepared his handshake. The chair completed its turn. Marcus's briefcase slipped from his sweating fingers and hit the floor with a loud thud. Jessica gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Sitting there, in a custom-tailored navy suit that cost more than Marcus's annual salary, with diamonds glittering at her throat and a look of absolute, terrifying calm on her face, was Clara. She crossed her legs. She took a slow sip of sparkling water. "Hello, husband," she said. For 10 seconds, the only sound in the room was the hum of the air conditioning and the blood rushing in Marcus's ears. His brain simply could not process the visual data. Clara, his Clara, the woman who couldn't figure out how to reset the Wi-Fi router? This is a joke," Marcus stammered, his confident facade cracking like cheap glass. He looked around at the board members. Is this a prank? Who hired her? Is she a stand-in? One of the board members, an older man with silver hair and a face carved from granite, stood up. This was Arthur Pendleton, one of the most feared corporate litigators in New York. Mr. Thorne, Arthur said, his voice deep and resonant, you are addressing Clara Sterling Vance. She is the majority shareholder and chairwoman of Vanguard Logic. She is also the daughter of the late Elias Sterling, the founder of this company. You would do well to show respect. Sterling, Marcus whispered. The name hit him like a physical blow. Elias Sterling was a legend, a titan of industry who had died 5 years ago, leaving his empire to an anonymous heir. Marcus looked at Clara. You're a Sterling. I am, Clara said, her voice devoid of the warmth she usually reserved for him. I dropped the name when I married you. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for my billions. I wanted to see if a man could build a life with me, not my bank account. She tilted her head, her eyes drilling into him. I got my answer this morning when you told me I dressed like a toilet cleaner. Jessica, realizing the gravity of the situation, tried to back away toward the door, but the security guard blocked her path. And who is this? Clara asked, shifting her gaze to Jessica. The associate. Marcus's throat was dry. He tried to pivot. He was a salesman, after all. He had to spin this. Clara, honey, look, it's a surprise. I brought her here to take notes. I had no idea you were involved in Vanguard. Why didn't you tell me? We could have run this together. We're a team. Clara laughed. It was a cold, dark sound. A team? Marcus, 20 minutes ago you were telling this woman that you were going to leave me with a small condo so I wouldn't starve. You called me a mouse. She picked up a file folder from the table and tossed it toward him. It slid across the mahogany surface and stopped right at his edge. Open it, she commanded. Marcus opened the folder with trembling hands. That, Clara said, is a forensic audit of your portfolio at your current firm. You see, Marcus, you didn't just come here to buy Vanguard. You came here to save yourself. You've been embezzling from your own clients to fund your gambling debts and her. She pointed a manicured finger at Jessica. That's a lie, Marcus shouted, sweat beading on his forehead. Those are fabrication. Are they? Clara asked. We have the bank transfers. We have the offshore accounts in the Caymans under the name Apex LLC. And guess who owns the bank in the Caymans where you hid the money? Marcus went pale. Vanguard Logic owns it. Clara smiled. I can see every penny you move. I've been watching you steal for 2 years, Marcus. I was just waiting for you to make a move against me. Jessica suddenly stepped forward, her survival instinct kicking in. I didn't know, she shrieked, looking at Clara. He told me he was single. Well, separated. He told me you were crazy. I'm just an employee. Marcus whipped around, staring at his mistress. Shut up, Jessica. No, you shut up, Jessica yelled, turning on him. I'm not going to jail for you. Mrs. Thorne, Mrs. Sterling, I can testify against him. He told me everything. He said he was going to hide assets during the divorce. Clara watched the two of them turn on each other with a look of bored detachment. Arthur, she said to her lawyer, please record everything Miss Vance says. She might be useful. Now, Clara stood up. She was tall in her heels, imposing. She walked around the table, approaching Marcus. He shrank back, expecting a slap. Instead, she leaned in close, her voice a whisper that only he could hear. You wanted to merge with Vanguard, Marcus. You wanted to be inside the beast. Well, you're here, but you're not a partner. You're the prey. She turned to the board. Gentlemen, Mr. Thorne's proposal to acquire us is rejected. Furthermore, as the majority shareholder of the firm he works for, yes, Marcus, I bought a controlling stake in your company 3 days ago, I am calling for an immediate vote on his employment. She looked at the board members. All in favor of terminating Mr. Thorne for cause, gross negligence and corporate espionage? Every hand in the room went up. Motion carried, Clara said. Marcus, you're fired. Security, please escort Mr. Thorne and his associate out of the building. Oh, and Marcus. He looked up, broken, tears stinging his eyes. Don't go home, she said. I changed the locks an hour ago, and I burned that grey silk tie. You never looked good in it anyway. The elevator ride down from the 60th floor was the longest silence of Marcus Thorne's life. He stood in the corner of the polished steel box, his reflection staring back at him. Pale, sweating, his tie missing, his collar undone. Beside him, Jessica Vance was frantically typing on her phone, her thumbs blurring across the screen. "What are you doing?" Marcus hissed, his voice cracking. "Deleting posts," Jessica snapped without looking up. "I tagged you in an Instagram story this morning. Power couple. Taking over the world. I need to scrub it before the news breaks. If the board sees that I was bragging while you were getting fired, I'll never work in this city again." "You think that's your problem?" Marcus laughed, a manic, high-pitched sound. "Jessica, I just lost a $20 million deal. I just lost my job. My wife is the hidden billionaire owner of the entire sector." "Your ex-wife," Jessica corrected coldly. "And frankly, Marcus, you lied to me. You said she was a nobody. You said she was dull. You didn't tell me she was Clara Sterling. Do you know who the Sterlings are? They eat people like us for breakfast." The elevator dinged. The doors opened to the lobby. It wasn't empty. While Marcus had been getting destroyed in the boardroom, word had leaked. In the age of social media, secrets have a lifespan of seconds. A crowd of onlookers, employees, couriers, and a few opportunistic freelance photographers had gathered near the security turnstiles. 2 large security guards gripped Marcus by the arms, not gently. They marched him across the marble floor like a common criminal. "Get your hands off me," Marcus shouted, trying to regain a shred of dignity. "I'm a partner at Thorne & Associates. I have rights." "Not here, you don't," the guard grunted, shoving him toward the revolving doors. As they spilled out onto the wet Seattle sidewalk, the rain had turned into a deluge. Marcus stumbled, nearly slipping on the wet concrete. Jessica followed, shielding her hair with her clutch, looking around frantically for an Uber. "Where is my car?" Marcus yelled at the valet stand. "Bring me my Porsche." The valet, a young man named Kevin, who usually scrambled for Marcus's tips, stood with his arms crossed. He held a set of keys, but he didn't move toward the car. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thorne," Kevin said, his face impassive. "We received a call from the leasing company 5 minutes ago. The vehicle has been flagged as company property of Vanguard Logic subsidiaries. It's been repossessed effective immediately." "Repossessed?" Marcus screamed, rain plastering his expensive shirt to his skin. "I pay the lease on that car." "Actually," a voice said from behind him. It was Arthur Pendleton, the silver-haired lawyer, standing under a large black umbrella held by an assistant. He had followed them down. "You paid the lease using a corporate expense account linked to your firm. Since Clara acquired your firm this morning, she technically owns the lease, and she has revoked your driving privileges." Arthur signaled to the valet. "Keep the keys, Kevin." "This is theft," Marcus roared, lunging toward Arthur, but the security guard stepped in his path, massive walls of muscle. "It's forensic accounting, Marcus," Arthur said calmly. "We're just freezing assets pending the investigation into your embezzlement." "Speaking of assets," Marcus's phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again, and again, a rapid-fire succession of notifications. He pulled it out, shielding the screen from the rain. Chase Bank, alert. Your account ending in 8890 has been frozen. Amex Platinum, card privileges suspended. E-Trade, trading account locked due to SEC inquiry. What did you do? Marcus whispered, looking at Arthur with horror. We alerted the authorities to the suspicious transfers we found, Arthur explained, checking his watch. The FBI takes wire fraud very seriously. They freeze everything first and ask questions later. You have zero access to funds, Marcus, not a dime. Marcus turned to Jessica. She was standing by the curb, an Uber pulling up. Jess, Marcus said, his voice desperate. Jess, pay for a cab. Let's go to your place. We can figure this out. I have cash in the safe at the penthouse. I just need to get there before they change the codes. Jessica looked at him. She looked at the rain soaking his suit, the desperation in his eyes, the utter ruin of a man who, just an hour ago, was promising her the world. She opened the Uber door. My apartment is small, Marcus, she said, and I don't date unemployed men with FBI investigations. It's bad for my brand. Jessica, he pleaded, reaching for her. I did this for us. You did this for yourself, she said, slamming the car door. The car sped away, splashing dirty puddle water onto Marcus's trousers. He stood there, alone, drenched, penniless, and publicly humiliated. Arthur Pendleton watched him for a moment longer, a look of mild pity on his face, before turning and walking back into the warmth of the skyscraper. Marcus began to walk. He didn't know where. He just walked into the grey city, the weight of his arrogance crushing him with every step. 3 days later, Clara sat in the library of the penthouse. The room was quiet, smelling of old paper and lemon polish. The rain had stopped, replaced by a cold, crisp sunlight that illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air. She wasn't wearing her power suit today. She was wearing a soft cashmere sweater and jeans, curled up in a leather armchair. But her mind was in combat mode. Across from her sat Arthur and a team of 3 forensic accountants. The table was covered in stacks of paper. Marcus's life, reduced to receipts and lies. It's worse than we thought, Arthur said, sliding a spreadsheet toward her. He wasn't just skimming from the top. He was leveraging the equity of this very apartment, which, thank God, is in your name, to secure high-risk loans for a gambling habit we didn't know about. Clara picked up the paper. Gambling. Crypto futures and underground poker, one of the accountants replied. He's in the hole for about $4 million to some very unsavory characters in Macau. He was banking on the Vanguard merger bonus to pay them off. Without that deal, he's in physical danger. Clara stared at the numbers. She felt a phantom ache in her chest. Not love, that had died the moment she found the second phone in his briefcase 6 months ago, but a mourning for the potential. Marcus had been brilliant once, charismatic, funny. But greed was a cancer, and it had eaten him alive. Where is he? Clara asked. He's staying at a Motel 6 near the airport, Arthur said. He sold his watch to pay for the week. He's been trying to get a lawyer, but no reputable firm will touch him because they know they're up against the Sterling estate. However, Arthur paused, looking uncomfortable. However what? He found Damon Wolfe. Clara's eyes narrowed. The pit bull? The guy who defends cartel bosses? The same. Wolfe called my office this morning. He's filing a countersuit. He claims you committed marital fraud. Marital fraud? Clara laughed incredulously. I didn't lie about who I was. I just didn't tell him everything. There's a difference. Wolfe's angle is that by hiding your wealth, you denied Marcus his right to marital lifestyle equity. He claims that if he had known you were a billionaire, he would have made different career choices, and therefore you owe him for lost opportunity costs. It's nonsense, legally speaking, but it's designed to be loud. He wants a settlement. He's threatening to go to the press with stories about your father. Clara's face hardened. Her father, Elias, had been a brilliant man, but he had demons, mental health struggles that he had kept private. If Marcus dragged Elias's memory through the mud just to get a payout— "Get the car," Clara said, standing up. "Where are we going?" Arthur asked. "To see Damon Wolfe. I want to look him in the eye." The law offices of Damon Wolfe were located in a strip mall in a gritty part of town, a stark contrast to the glass towers of the financial district. The waiting room smelled of stale coffee and desperation. When Clara walked in, flanked by Arthur and 2 bodyguards, the receptionist dropped her gum. Mrs. Thorne?" "Ms. Sterling," Clara corrected. "Tell Mr. Wolfe I'm here." The door to the inner office flew open and Damon Wolfe stepped out. He was a short, stocky man with slicked back hair and a suit that was too shiny. He grinned, showing teeth that looked too white to be real. "Well, well, the Queen of Vanguard comes to the slums," Wolfe sneered. "Come to cut a check, Clara. My client is very distressed." "Your client is a thief and an adulterer," Clara said, stepping past him into his office without an invitation. Marcus was there. He sat in a cheap plastic chair, looking haggard. He hadn't shaved in 3 days. His clothes were rumpled. When he saw Clara, a flash of hope crossed his face, followed quickly by shame, and then anger. "You ruined me," Marcus spat. "You ruined yourself, Marcus. I just turned on the lights," Clara replied calmly. She remained standing. "Mr. Wolfe, you're threatening to expose my father's medical history. Let me be clear. If you mention Elias Sterling's name in a press release, I will not sue you. I will buy this building, I will evict you, and I will fund a bar association inquiry into your practice that will keep you in court for the next 20 years. I have the resources to ensure you never practice law again. Do we understand each other?" Wolfe's grin faltered. He looked at Arthur, who nodded solemnly. "However," Clara continued, turning to Marcus, "I am not cruel. I have a proposal." She placed a single document on the desk. "This is a settlement. I will pay off your gambling debt in Macau, the 4 million. I will ensure you aren't killed by loan sharks. In exchange, you sign this. You waive all rights to any assets. You sign a lifetime NDA, and you leave Seattle permanently. If you ever return, the deal is void, and I let the FBI prosecute you for the wire fraud." Marcus looked at the document. It was a lifeline. It was freedom from death, but it was also total defeat. "You'd pay 4 million for me?" Marcus asked softly. "After everything?" "I'm not paying it for you," Clara said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I'm paying it so I never have to see your face again. It's the price of my peace." Marcus picked up the pen. His hand shook. He looked at Wolfe, who shrugged. "Take it, kid. She's got you cornered." Marcus signed. The victory at Wolfe's office should have felt satisfying. Clara had neutralized the threat. She had protected her father's legacy. She had effectively banished Marcus from her life. But as the weeks passed, the silence in the penthouse grew louder. Clara threw herself into work. She took over the CEO role at Vanguard publicly. She graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune. "The hidden heiress rises," the headlines read. She was celebrated as a feminist icon, the woman who outsmarted a toxic husband and took back her empire. But inside Vanguard, the waters were chopping. "We have a leak," Sarah, her executive assistant, said one Tuesday morning. Clara looked up from her tablet. "What kind of leak?" Project Helios, Sarah said grimly. The specs for the quantum processor we're developing. A competitor in Shanghai just filed a patent for a component that is identical to ours. Someone is selling our R&D data. Clara felt a cold chill. Project Helios was top secret. Only 5 people had access to the full schematics. Who had access? Clara asked. The board, Sarah said. And Marcus did. Back when he was doing due diligence for the merger, he had access to the data room for 48 hours. Clara shook her head. Marcus is in Chicago. We tracked him. He's working as a car salesman under a different name. He signed the NDA. He knows I'd destroy him. Maybe he didn't sell it himself, Arthur suggested, entering the room. Maybe he made a copy before he was fired and gave it to someone else. Someone he trusted. Clara's mind raced. Who did Marcus trust? He trusted no one. He used people. Jessica, Clara whispered. The mistress, Arthur asked. She was with him, Clara realized. That day in the boardroom. She was an analyst at his firm. She has a background in data. What happened to her? Arthur tapped on his iPad. After the scandal, she was blacklisted. No reputable firm hired her. But, looking at her financials, she just bought a condo in Miami. Cash. $3 million. Clara stood up, pacing the floor. She stole the data. Marcus must have downloaded it to a drive, and she took it, or he gave it to her as insurance, and she sold it without him knowing. If she sold Helios specs to the Chinese market, she's committed international corporate espionage, Arthur said. That's federal prison time. 20 years. Get the jet ready, Clara said, grabbing her coat. We're going to Miami. 2 days later, in a sun-drenched cafe in South Beach, Jessica Vance sat wearing oversized sunglasses, sipping a mojito. She looked relaxed, wealthy, and unbothered. She didn't notice the 2 men in dark suits approaching her table until they were standing over her. Miss Vance, one of them said. I'm not signing autographs, she said dismissively. We're not fans, we're FBI. Jessica choked on her drink. She lowered her glasses. What? Behind the agents, Clara stepped into view. She looked radiant in a white linen suit, but her eyes were deadly. Hello, Jessica, Clara said pleasantly. Enjoying the proceeds of Project Helios? Jessica's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. We found the digital trail, Clara lied smoothly. They hadn't found it all yet, but she needed a confession. You used Marcus's login credentials to download the files while he was driving you to the meeting that morning. You knew he was going to get fired eventually. You were planning your own exit strategy. He was an idiot, Jessica blurted out, panic taking over. He was going to crash and burn. I just took what I could. It was just a flash drive. I didn't think it was a big deal. You sold proprietary quantum computing designs to a foreign entity, the FBI agent said, pulling out handcuffs. That is a very big deal, Mom. As the agents cuffed Jessica, she started screaming. It was Marcus. He told me to do it. Blame him. Clara stepped closer. Marcus didn't even know you had it, did he? You stole from the thief. Jessica spat at Clara's feet. You think you're so perfect? You have everything. Money, power. What did we have? Nothing. We just wanted a piece of the pie. You could have worked for the pie, Clara said softly. I did. My father left me the money, but I built the company. You chose the shortcut. And the shortcut leads here. Clara watched as Jessica was dragged away into a waiting black SUV, tourists snapping photos of the scene. She pulled out her phone and dialed Arthur. It's done, she said. She confessed. The patent filing will be blocked. And Marcus? Arthur asked. Does he know? He will when he sees the news tonight, Clara said. He'll realize that the only woman he left me for stole his one leverage and sent herself to prison. He really is alone now. Clara hung up. She stood on the sidewalk in Miami, the ocean breeze blowing through her hair. She had won the war. She had defeated the enemies. But as she looked at the empty seat where Jessica had been, she realized the drama wasn't quite over. There was one loose end, one emotional thread she hadn't cut. She needed to see Marcus one last time, not to threaten him, not to pay him off, but to say goodbye to the man she had married, the man who existed before the money and the greed destroyed him. She headed to the airport. Destination: Chicago. The wind in Chicago cut differently than the rain in Seattle. It was a physical assault, a knife made of ice that sliced through layers of wool and skin. Clara stood across the street from Big Mike's Auto Emporium, a dismal stretch of cracked asphalt on the outskirts of the city, illuminated by flickering fluorescent tube lights that hummed like dying insects. Rows of rusted sedans and dented pickup trucks sat under a layer of grey slush. She adjusted the collar of her heavy trench coat. She had left her security detail in the black SUV around the corner. She needed to do this alone. She watched a man in a cheap, ill-fitting parka walking between the rows of cars. He was kicking the tires of a 2015 Honda Civic, talking animatedly to a skeptical couple who looked like they would rather be anywhere else. It was Marcus. But it wasn't the Marcus who wore Brioni suits and drank aged scotch. This Marcus looked hollowed out. His face was gaunt, his skin ruddy from the cold. The arrogance that had once defined his posture was gone, replaced by a desperate, hunched hustle. Clara waited until the couple shook their heads and walked away. Marcus watched them go, his shoulders slumping. He pulled a flask from his pocket, took a quick swig, and turned around, right into Clara's path. He froze. The flask slipped from his gloved fingers and fell into the snow. "Hello, Marcus," Clara said, her voice steady against the wind. He stared at her as if she were a hallucination. He blinked rapidly, his eyes darting to the street, looking for cameras, for police, for lawyers. "Clara?" His voice was raspy. What are you doing here? Did you come to gloat? Is the NDA not enough? Do you want my blood now?" "I came to tell you about Jessica," Clara said. Marcus let out a bitter, barking laugh. "Jessica, I haven't spoken to her in months. She blocked my number the second the money ran dry. I hope she's rotting in hell." "She's not in hell," Clara said calmly. "She's in federal custody. She was arrested 2 days ago in Miami." Marcus's eyes widened. "Arrested? For what?" "For selling the Helios data, the data she stole from you." Marcus staggered back, leaning against the hood of the Honda for support. "Stole from me? No, I had that drive in my briefcase. I was going to use it as leverage if the severance package was too low. I never gave it to her." "She took it, Marcus. While you were driving her to the meeting. While you were bragging about leaving me. She was robbing you blind." Marcus slid down the front of the car until he was crouching in the snow, his hands covering his face. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. The woman he had destroyed his marriage for, the woman he had embezzled millions to impress, had played him for a fool from the very beginning. "I lost everything for nothing," he whispered into his hands. "For absolutely nothing." Clara looked down at him. She expected to feel satisfaction. She expected to feel the thrill of victory. But all she felt was a profound, aching pity. "Why, Marcus?" she asked softly. "Why did you do it? We had a good life, even before you knew about the money. I loved you. Why wasn't I enough?" Marcus looked up, tears freezing on his cheeks. "Because you were too good," he said, the truth finally spilling out of him. You were always so content. You didn't need anything. You didn't need me. I wanted to be the hero, Clara. I wanted to be the one who saved you, who bought you things, who made you feel special. But no matter what I did, you were just happy. It made me feel small. It made me feel useless. He stood up, wiping his nose with his sleeve. And then I found Jessica. She needed things. She needed money. She needed status. She made me feel like a king because I could give her those things. I stole the money to feed the fantasy that I was a big man. But I wasn't. I was just a small man with a big ego. He looked at Clara's clothes, her posture, the silent power she radiated. And now I know, he continued, his voice breaking. You were never the mouse. You were the lioness sleeping. And I was stupid enough to poke you. Clara nodded slowly. It was the closure she needed. It wasn't about the money. It was about his own insecurity. I'm leaving, Marcus, she said. Wait. He took a step toward her. Clara, is there any chance? I've changed. Look at me. I'm humbled. I'm working a refined job. I'm paying my debts. We could start over. No lies this time. I know who you are now. Clara looked at him, and for a second she remembered the man she had married 5 years ago. But that man was dead. You don't miss me, Marcus, she said, turning away. You miss the access. You miss the safety. And I am not a shelter for broken men anymore. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. She placed it on the hood of the car. What is that? He asked. A plane ticket, she said. One way. To London. London? Arthur found out that the loan sharks from Macau have tracked you to Chicago. They're coming for you, Marcus. Tonight. Marcus went pale. You're saving me? I'm not saving you, Clara said, walking away toward the waiting SUV. I'm saving myself from the guilt of knowing you died in a gutter. Take the flight, disappear, and never, ever say my name again. She got into the car without looking back. As the SUV pulled away, she saw Marcus in the rearview mirror, clutching the envelope to his chest, standing alone in the snow under the flickering lights of the used car lot. 1 year later, the reflection in the floor-to-ceiling mirror of the penthouse master suite was no longer that of a woman who hid in oversized cardigans. The woman staring back was a stranger to the old Clara, and yet she was exactly who Clara was always meant to be. Clara adjusted the strap of her midnight blue velvet gown. It was custom-made by McQueen, designed to look like armor disguised as elegance. Diamonds, cold and brilliant, dripped from her ears. She touched the necklace at her throat, the same one she had worn the day she fired Marcus. It was her talisman. The car is ready, Miss Sterling, Arthur Pendleton said from the doorway. He had aged a year, but he looked happier. The stress of the Thorn era was gone. Thank you, Arthur, Clara said. She didn't turn immediately. Do I look like someone who can be lied to? Arthur smiled gently. You look like someone who would eat a liar for breakfast and not even need a toothpick. Clara allowed herself a small, sharp smile. Good, because tonight isn't just a gala, it's a coronation. The Plaza Hotel, New York City. The annual Global Tech Summit was the shark tank of the industry. It was where billionaires measured their egos against each other. In previous years, Marcus would have been desperate to get an invite to the lobby, let alone the ballroom. Tonight, Clara was the keynote speaker. As her motorcade pulled up, 3 black Escalades, security tight, the paparazzi went into a frenzy. Miss Sterling, over here! Clara, is it true you're acquiring Cyberdyne? Look this way, Clara. She stepped out, the flashbulbs exploding like lightning storms. She didn't flinch. She walked the red carpet with a predator's grace, flanked by Arthur and her new head of security, a former Navy SEAL named Cole, who made Marcus look like a paper doll. Inside, the atmosphere changed. It wasn't noisy. It was the hushed, dangerous quiet of high-stakes power. As Clara entered the ballroom, the sea of black tuxedos parted. She could hear the whispers. They trailed behind her like the train of her dress. That's her, the Iron Lady. I heard she gutted her own board just to make a point. Don't look her in the eye unless you have your numbers right. A man stepped into her path. It was Simon Wexler, the CEO of a rival firm who had tried to hostile take over Vanguard Logic 6 months ago, assuming Clara was a grieving divorcee who didn't know math. Clara, Wexler said, holding a glass of scotch, a condescending smirk plastered on his face. You look lovely. A bit thin, perhaps. The stress of the big chair must be getting to you. If you ever want to sell, my offer still stands. The old Clara would have been polite. The old Clara would have made an excuse and walked away. The new Clara stopped. She turned her entire body toward him, demanding the attention of the surrounding circle. Simon, she said, her voice smooth as silk but hard as steel. It's funny you mention stress. I imagine you must be feeling quite a bit of it. My analysts tell me your Q3 earnings are down 40% because your flagship processor overheats. Investors are calling for blood. Wexler's smile faltered. That's industry gossip. Is it? Clara stepped closer, invading his personal space. Because I bought 7% of your company stock this morning through a shell corporation. I have access to your internal memos. You're not in a position to buy me, Simon. You're barely in a position to buy that scotch. She patted him on the shoulder, a gesture that was patronizing and terrifying all at once. Fix your cooling system, or I'll buy the rest of your company and turn your headquarters into a daycare center for my employees. Enjoy the evening. She walked past him. Wexler stood frozen, pale and humiliated, as the nearby executives quickly turned their backs on him to follow Clara. The speech. When Clara took the stage, the silence was absolute. She adjusted the microphone, looking out at the 1,000 faces in the darkness. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice resonating through the hall. We talk a lot about disruption in this industry. We talk about breaking systems to build better ones. But the hardest system to break is the one in your own mind. She paused, her eyes scanning the front row. For 5 years, I lived in a shadow. I allowed myself to be defined by someone else's perception of me. I thought that by making myself small, I was being a good partner. I thought that loyalty meant blindness. She took a breath. This was the part she hadn't rehearsed. But I learned a hard lesson. Betrayal is a teacher. It clears the vision. When the person I trusted most tried to burn my house down, I didn't run. I stood in the flames and built a fortress. And to anyone in this room who thinks kindness is a weakness, I invite you to try me. The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was thunderous. It was the sound of respect won through war. The aftermath. Later during the cocktail hour, Clara slipped away to the balcony overlooking Central Park. The city lights stretched out endlessly, a grid of electricity and ambition. She closed her eyes and let the cold night air hit her face. In that silence, her mind traveled. It went across the ocean to a cramped flat in a rainy suburb of London. She knew Arthur kept tabs. Marcus was working the night shift at a 24-hour convenience store. He had aged 10 years in one. He spent his nights stocking shelves and checking the lottery tickets of people who had more hope than he did. He lived in fear of the shadows, looking over his shoulder for debt collectors, a ghost haunting his own life. He had sold his soul for a suit and a title, and now he had neither. Her mind traveled further, to a federal penitentiary in Florida. Jessica Vance was sitting in a 6-8 cell. The blonde hair was gone, replaced by a dull brown. The designer dresses were swapped for scratchy orange cotton. She was alone, surrounded by walls she couldn't charm her way out of. She had wanted a seat at the table so badly that she stole the silverware, and now she was eating off a plastic tray. They were gone, excised, like tumors removed to save the body. "You look like a general surveying the battlefield after the victory," a voice said. Clara opened her eyes. Standing a few feet away was a man she recognized, Julian Blackwood. He wasn't a tech CEO, he was an architect, a man who built things that lasted. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that held a quiet intelligence. "The battle is over," Clara said, turning to lean against the stone railing. "Now comes the hard part. Ruling the kingdom." "Is it lonely?" Julian asked. He didn't move closer. He respected her perimeter. "The top of the mountain usually is." "It's peaceful," Clara corrected. "I had enough noise for a lifetime. I prefer the quiet." "I saw what you did to Vexler inside," Julian said, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "It was terrifying and brilliant. You didn't just beat him, you dismantled him." "He underestimated me," Clara shrugged. "Men like him always do. They see the velvet and miss the steel." Julian finally took a step closer. "I don't think I'd make that mistake. I've been watching you, Clara. Not the headlines. You. I saw you at the charity gala last month. You spent an hour talking to the kitchen staff, asking about their families. That tells me more about you than your stock price." Clara studied him. She looked for the lie. She looked for the angle. But Julian Blackwood was just standing there, hands in his pockets, open. "I'm not an easy woman to know, Julian," she said, her voice dropping. "I have scars, and I have walls that are higher than the skyscrapers you build." "I'm an architect, Clara," Julian replied softly. "I know how to build bridges over walls, and I have plenty of time." He extended a hand, not to take something from her, but to offer. "Dinner?" he asked. "No business, no mergers, just Italian food at a place in the village where nobody cares who we are." Clara looked at his hand. For the first time in a year, the ice around her heart thawed, just a fraction. She realized she didn't need a savior. She didn't need a partner to validate her worth. But maybe, just maybe, she could use a companion for the view. She reached out and took his hand. His grip was warm, solid. "Okay, Julian," she said, "but I'm driving, and if you bore me, I will leave you on the curb." Julian laughed, a rich, genuine sound that seemed to chase away the ghosts of the past. "I wouldn't expect anything less." As they walked back inside, arm in arm, the glass doors reflected their image. The broken wife was gone. The vengeful ex was gone. The Queen had ascended, and she was just getting started. And that is the story of how Marcus Thorne lost a billionaire wife, a mistress, and his freedom, all because he mistook kindness for weakness. It's a brutal reminder that you should never bite the hand that feeds you, especially when you don't know who's actually signing the checks. Marcus thought he was the main character of his life, but he was just a subplot in Clara's empire. If you enjoyed this story of karma, betrayal, and the ultimate boss lady revenge, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a reminder to know their worth, and hit subscribe with the notification bell turned on so you never miss a new story. We drop new dramas every week. Thanks for watching, And remember, the truth always comes out in the boardroom.